Well, as we begin today, as we begin all of our gatherings, I'd like to, before we even start about what we're going to do and go over the agenda, which we will do next, I'd like to bring us all into just a presencing moment. We have extraordinary human beings on this call and who are part of Future Capital, and we are incredibly blessed to have you all be part of this really important initiative, global initiative. So I'd like to start with a moment of silence. So if you would, please just mute your audio, and we'll bring us all into a place of being present together, knowing that this temporary delusion of being separate has been obviously a very strong lesson for us during these very strange times with the virus, and showing us all that we are in fact very, very deeply connected to each other with the air we breathe and the economies that we build, and the capital as a tool that we utilize. So let's do a moment of silence and really just come in and just be together. And then I'm going to ask my brother Mindahi to say a brief prayer for us and a brief offering of a welcoming. Wonderful.
Tokaramik tenuzaki, tokaramik tenumui. Kamadi makihmu, kamadi makita dihmewa. Moshingentini ku, moshingentini kwada, moshingentini chichikulu. Dihmewa makata maheti oka. With the permission of the Great Spirit, the four directions, the four colors. With the permission of Father Sky and Mother Earth. And with your permission of this beautiful gathering, we call for the strength, for peace and dignity. We call for strength and love among human beings, and we call for peace with Mother Earth. We are here together in this time, difficult times of civilizational crisis at all levels. This is a difficult time, but this is also a big opportunity for the unification process, for coming together and be stronger. In our prophecies, we were thinking about always for the new dawn, and the dawn is here. And it's up to us how to behave, how to come confident and get consciousness about our role as human beings in the care of life. Brothers and sisters, relatives of the four directions, we bless this gathering with love and strength, with dignity. Mochingentini kwada, mochingentini ku, dihmewa. Dihmewa. May love be among us, and also clarity and intelligence and wisdom. Kamadi, thank you.
Thank you, Mindahi. Heather, if you would lead us through a brief overview of what we're going to do today as an outline, and then I will jump in and make some initial comments, and we'll jump right into our first presenter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. So this morning, I'm looking forward to moving all in, a very peaceful and graceful kind of manner and a collective manner. So what today is going to look like is we have four presenters talking about their individual work. I'm going to pass it over. I'm going to start with passing it over to Lawrence for a word, kind of about who we are, why we're gathered here, what we're doing. And he's going to be presenting each individual. So while everyone starts to, I will prompt you, but when we start to get into the speakers or the presenters, I'm going to ask that you turn your video off and that you remain on mute. So the only individual on the screen will be the ones that are presenting. So in order of presenting, we're going to kick off today with Mr. Richard Barrett. He's going to join us and present for 10 minutes on his work. You're going to hear a voice in the sky today. That's Patty Clower's voice. Patty is going to filter all our questions and answers. So if you would, you have, there are multiple features. We have a chat feature as well as a question and answer feature. Chat, please feel free to start up the conversation in chat, to chat with each other, to chat back and forth. We ask that your questions get put in the Q&A section. So if you take your cursor and you scroll down, you'll see Q&A. Type that in. Patty's going to be fielding those questions. Now, do not worry if we don't get to your questions today. We'll make sure we follow up with those questions as well. So we'll have 10 minutes presenting. Richard's going to go first. Then Patty's going to have the voice from the sky. Then we'll do Q&A. Then don't get nervous. Lawrence is going to appear back on the screen, and Richard will he'll kill his video and make sure he's on mute. And then Lawrence is going to introduce the next presenter. The next presenter will have Mindahi coming in, presenting for 5 minutes. Then Amelia Barlow is with us as well, is going to come in for 5 minutes to present as well. Then again, Patty from the sky doing our Q&A. And Lawrence will come back in after the 10-minute Q&A, and we'll ask Mindahi and Amelia to stop your video. And Lawrence will introduce, and we'll have Michael Gelb as our final roundup presenter. Lawrence will introduce Michael, hand it over to Michael, who will do a 10-minute presentation. And then Patty Clower, again, our voice from the sky, will come in and field our questions and answers. Please feel free at any time if you have any technical difficulties or challenges, you can write that in the chat as well, and we'll make sure we're keeping an eye on that. So at this time, if I can ask all of you, your beautiful faces, don't go away forever. We are going to ask you to come back on at the end.
Heather,
Yeah.
how about if we don't go away yet until, I'd love to see everybody's faces when I speak. So
Fantastic.
when I'm done, if you guys could go, that would be great. And for those of you who are not indisposed, I'd love to us to all see each other. It's such a beautiful, beautiful community.
While you do that, let me just let everyone know, Lawrence, that I'm actually making the individuals that have come in welcome, making the attendees that have come in. We're going to promote you to panelist. You have the option to share your video or remain incognito. Totally up to you. Lawrence, back over to you. I'm sorry for interrupting. It's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you for taking over on that, because that would have been difficult for me to multitask on that one right
My
now.
pleasure.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. I am going to be incredibly brief because it's much more important to have the voices of the people who we have today in their time, and our time is going to be tight. So I'm just going to give you the place where this began, which was an incredibly beautiful, amazing, wonderful gentleman named Will Kennedy from the United Nations. He is a major part of the Office for Partnerships at the UN. And one crazy day on the West Coast, sitting at a table, he's sitting next to me and was told to be introduced to me, and asked me at that point if I would head up this movement on the nexus of consciousness and capital. Those exact words were not used at that moment, but the essence of it was very clear. And we kind of kid back thinking later, and he said to me, he knows that there's only one person crazy enough to say yes, and we knew you couldn't say no. So they kind of had me. From there, the magic really ensued. And as we know, languaging is very important in how we communicate as a species. And I just kind of laid it out there the way I do authentically, and saying, look, the two most powerful things we have as a species is our consciousness, which means everything that begins inside of us before we manifest our actions out into the world, pretty obvious. And then this thing called capital that we've created. And those are our two most powerful tools that we have as a species. And the simple premise is, until we get those two things in the room at the same time, overtly, consciously, to work together, we are not going to have the scale or sustainability in the change that I think all of us know we need in this world today. So that's really the simple fundamental principle of that. And then it absolutely exploded with some of the most amazing people around the globe. Our phones were ringing off the hook. The UN was saying to us, how are you doing all this? And we said, barely surviving, because it's not us. It's really something bigger than us that's happening. So we have thousands, a couple thousand people that are very excited about this, who are part of this. We are still very proudly an unorganization. We're not a 501c3. We're not a company. We are just a thing and a place and a foundation for people to come who understand this work is incredibly important during our times. I will mention a couple people. I mentioned Will Kennedy at the UN. I also want to mention our friend Chantaline Carpenter, who runs UNCTAD at the UN. incredible partners for us. Also, the World Academy of Arts and Sciences, Gary Jacob, who's here with us today, and Milas, who's created some really nice work with us in the past. And then also our working groups. So, you know, I got to call out Kaitan and his beautiful daughter there who's with him today, who's doing such incredible work with our capital group and other groups that are working in our education group with Pavel and Crystal. And I know all sorts of lovely people that are doing wonderful stuff and we don't have time to talk about. And then, of course, the Future Capital founders who were there at our first meeting at the UN last year. So that's enough of me. Let me turn it over to our first presenter. This is actually the time, unfortunately, where your faces are going to go away, but then we're going to have you guys all come back. So thank you for muting and getting your video turned off so we can have our first presenter, which is Richard Barrett. So this is really awkward because Richard is like my soul brother, but I'm actually going to read something so I don't forget it, or even worse, Richard makes something up. So Richard is an author, speaker, coach, and internationally recognized thought leader on the evolution of human values in business and society. He is the president of Barrett Academy for the Advancement of Human Values, the founder of Barrett Values Center, and a fellow of the World Business Academy and former values coordinator at the World Bank. Now, all of that sounds really impressive, but actually my definition of Richard Barrett is the Einstein of consciousness. So with a bar set like that, Mr. Barrett, how about you tell us what you're up to for the next 10 minutes, then we're gonna have Patty jump in. Patty, you can time this so we stay on schedule and start fielding questions. Again, questions go in the Q&A button down in the bottom. It's the best way to organize that. And then if there's chats that you want to have go back and forth, please feel free to use the chat button. And Richard, I'm going to disappear and come back as well. All yours, my friend.
Okay, thank you so much. Huge challenge in 10 minutes to present 30 or 40 years of work. But let me start with an answer to the question, what is consciousness, or what is conscious? And I've come to the conclusion that consciousness is awareness with a purpose. And if we are living, anything that's in this three-dimensional material world is conscious, and it has awareness, and it has a purpose. And the purpose, basically, of everything is to maintain internal stability and external equilibrium. If you can't maintain internal stability and external equilibrium, then you will cease to exist. And this applies to atoms, cells, human beings, nations, organizations, no matter what. Consciousness is awareness with a purpose. The purpose is always to maintain internal stability and external equilibrium. And right now, at this moment in time, we have a lot of instability in the world. But this isn't the first time we've had this instability, because it's been going on for many years. In fact, when Homo sapiens first appeared 200,000 years ago, actually, there was a lot of stability, and it went on for nearly 185,000 years. And it was about 15 or maybe 10,000 years ago that the first wave of instability came along as people who lived in what I call clan awareness started settling down, and we moved into tribe awareness. And this instability created a new worldview, tribe awareness. And then something new happened around 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, which had to do with the climate change, actually. And we shifted into, we got into more instability, and a new worldview emerged. And that was what I call state awareness. So we moved from clan awareness to tribe awareness to state awareness. And then around 2,000 years, 1,500 years ago, another stabilizing influence came, and we could no longer live in state awareness. It was too chaotic. And we moved into what I call nation awareness. And the cosmology in that awareness was monotheistic religions. Around 1600, we moved into a new awareness as we began to explore the world, and that became wealth awareness. And then more recently, we moved from around the last 100 to 200 years, we moved into people awareness. Now, each stage in that development, there was instability, which created a new worldview. Well, right now, we're in the midst of the biggest instability in the world. We've got climate crisis, and suddenly out of the left field comes COVID-19, and we're ready for the next worldview, which is humanity awareness. And that's what I'm going to talk about, the Humanity Awareness Initiative. It is the next worldview that is going to appear on the planet. And you can find out all about it at that website, which is there. It's really the Barrett Academy website, but that's the shortened version of it. So are there nations living at humanity awareness? No, they're not. I've been measuring the consciousness of nations now for since 2014, 16, 18, 2019, and there are only about 7 or 8 nations living at people awareness, the one below humanity awareness. And these are, guess what, the Nordic nations, plus Switzerland and New Zealand, and Canada keeps popping up then and dropping down again, and then there are about 9 nations that actually are in the next level down, which is wealth awareness, which is mostly the northern nations of Europe, including and as well as Australia. And then below that come other host of nations. Now, I've been measuring the consciousness of these nations now, as I said, for quite some time, and we see that the consciousness of USA has been going down gradually and gradually. The top 5 or 6 nations are pretty much always the same. Who are they? They are the Nordic nations, plus New Zealand and Switzerland. And so I asked myself 3 years ago, what would it take to move from people awareness of these Nordic nations into humanity awareness? And I pulled together a group of people in Oxford, 12 people, to talk about that. 3 years ago, and 2 years ago, I did the same thing again. Instead of having 12 people, this time I had 28 people. And that was the birth of the Humanity Awareness Initiative. Now, what is this initiative about? It's about something that's already took place in the Nordic nations over 150 years ago. In 1850, the Nordic nations realized that the Industrial Revolution was coming and the people would be moving from the towns and villages into the cities, and they put together an education program for young adults to help them to make that shift. Now, they called that Bildung, and you can read about it in the Nordic Secret, the book. Now, what was this Bildung? It's what I call individuation. What Carl Jung called individuation is the 4th stage of development. Now, what is the Humanity Awareness Initiative about? Is to repeat that Bildung experience in every nation in all over the world, to teach young people how to become conscious, because individuation is all about becoming conscious. And what does that mean? It means 3 things. 1, you become aware of the impact of your actions and behaviors on other people. 2, you become aware of your thoughts, the impact of your thoughts and beliefs on your physical and mental health. And thirdly, and this is the most important point, you care about the impact that your actions have on other people and the planet, and you care about the impact your thoughts and beliefs have on your physical and mental health. That is called becoming conscious. Now, only a small percentage of people on the planet are actually conscious because they live in conditions which don't allow them to be conscious. They live in survival, safety, security, those stages of development, those levels of consciousness. So what did the Nordic nations do? They created the possibility for people to have those needs met through what was called a welfare state. I'm not talking about communism. I'm talking about a state that cares about people, cares about everyone. And so when your needs got cared for, those survival, safety, and security needs, those first 3 levels of Maslow's hierarchy, you are free to individuate. And that's what happened in those nations. And so what I'm attempting to do through the Humanity Awareness Initiative is to create the curriculum that are required to support the individuation of young people, young adults all over the world, to make that freely available, to provide trainers to train people who work in not-for-profits and people who are working with young people to provide training for those trainers so they can take these curriculum all over the world and on a nation-by-nation basis. So in the Humanity Awareness Initiative, we are actually creating country teams. And in those country teams, they are collecting and bringing together people who are working with young people and saying, here is a new vision for the world. You can see it on this website. Here is a new vision. If you can sign up for that, then we can provide you with the curriculum that will help implement that vision. And we'll provide you with trainers to train your people to implement that vision. And through Future Capital, we'll provide you with income, well, money. We'll channel money into these organizations so that they can make that difference in the world. So I think my 10 minutes is probably up, and I'm going to stop right there.
Perfect timing, Richard. Let's hope right on target. Well done. I know 10 minutes is very difficult with a lifetime worth of work. In the Q&A, there will be ways to contact Richard, but let me hand it over to Patty so we can get right into questions.
I call Patty Spirit in the Sky, not Voice in the Sky. There was that wonderful song that came out many years ago, Spirit in the Sky. So come on, Patty, be our spirit in the sky.
Hello, Patty. Okay, I think maybe Heather might have to jump in for Patty. I'm not sure what's going on. Heather, why don't you jump in for Patty?
Absolutely. I would be more than happy to step in. Those are some big shoes, but I'll do my best to see what I can do. So Richard, can you, some of the questions that have come in really quick, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey and why really your passion around humanity awareness kind of was born?
Gosh, it's my sole inspiration. I started my life as a transportation engineer. I was working at the World Bank. I was 45 years old, and I suddenly realized I was totally bored with my career. And I realized that I'd misheard my soul saying when I was 17, transportation engineer. I thought that's what it said, but it said transformation engineer. And so then I shifted completely. I left the World Bank and started the Barrett Value Center to measure values, mapping it to the levels of consciousness. And I've just moved on and on from there. Now I'm deep into the understanding of ego-soul dynamics, how you become conscious as an individual, how do you become a soul having that human experience. We don't have souls, we are souls, and that's what I've learned. And living from that place allows us to super create and to be able to become the servant of what wants to come through us. And I think that's everybody's desire, to be the servant of their soul. And because that's how you find joy and fulfillment in your life. And that's my journey, basically, into my journey into soul consciousness.
Richard, thank you so much. That is just so beautiful. Can you give, and beautiful journey, Joe, I totally agree. I'm kind of looking at the chat as well, Richard. And for all of you, Richard's follow-up information, for more information, is located in the chat. But Richard, for individuals that are in the process of really beginning to listen and hear their song's voice, and then perhaps sometimes things get loud on the other side, on their current world with the voices and the things that are going on. Do you have any advice for individuals, again, that are really finding their soul's vibration, their soul's journey, what they're doing here and why they're here? Do you have any advice to give those individuals as they really begin to integrate in their lives where they are right now?
So the key to living in soul consciousness is to let go of your fears. Subconscious fears, we all have subconscious fears from our childhood. I've never met anybody, including Lawrence, who doesn't have some subconscious fear. I say that because he's my buddy and we love to punch each other a little bit, you know. Anyhow, we all have, I have it, but I spent a lifetime working on those subconscious fears. As you release your fear, the energy of love that emanates from the soul fills your being. Fear disappears, love comes in. And then comes the next important point, letting go of fear, trusting the soul. That's the hardest. Handing your life over, it seems like, but actually your life was always the life of the soul. It was never anybody else's life. It wasn't your life. It was the life of your soul. And so surrendering to the soul is like so fundamental to becoming who you can become. And the soul is really only interested in three things. One, self-expression, fully expressing who you are, connecting, because the soul hates separation, and contributing. And that is what's been going on during this crisis right now. I pulled together a group of people the other day who've been at my workshops, and I said, what's happening to you in lockdown? And that's what they said. We are connecting, we are contributing, and some of them were actually leaving their jobs and beginning to find work which was the true eminence of their soul. So that's really what we all have to do. Let go of fear, trust your soul, get on with the job.
Fantastic, Richard. You make it sound so beautifully easy and amazing. And for all of you, I love that joke when you said subconscious fears. I have seen and had the joy of seeing you and Lawrence play like children. So for all the audience, they've had to go in their timeout in their corners as well. But we have a lot of fun here. So when we talk about subconscious fears, Richard, so many of us are here, you know, future capital is really the driving force, and one of the driving forces that has driven us so beautifully together. Can you talk about some of those sub fears or those deep rooted fears surrounding money?
Well, I wish I could, because I've never had those fears, but then I've never had any money either. So. But actually, there are three categories of fear that come up for everybody. Do I have enough? Which goes right back to that particular question. Am I loved enough? Which is the relationship question. The first one's the survival question. Do I have enough? Am I loved enough? And then the third question is, am I enough? That's the self-esteem question. And basically, all our fears come from the ego's attachment to beliefs that we don't have enough, we're not loved enough, and we are not enough. And so those are the types of fears that we all have. And releasing those fears, if you're human, you'll have some of those fears. That's just part of being human. But learning to release and master those fears is important. Now, I say master because all of these fears we learn when we're young, and our mind, our brain is growing and developing, and all our experiences during the first 20 years of our lives are based on emergent learning, and those fears become hardwired. And so sometimes those fears are so hardwired that the best thing you can do is master them. I mean, I have subconscious fears that I've learned to master. It means, like, when I get triggered, I used to spend 2 days in upset. Since I mastered those fears, I can get out of that in 5 minutes. And that's the key. So either you release your fears or you master your fears, but you become conscious of how your thoughts and beliefs are impacting your physical and mental health. That's part of becoming conscious.
Well, Richard, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. And one last question, and we have about 2 minutes left, so we'll kind of do a lightning round here, Richard. Can you talk about, I know that one of the working groups that is diving into handling these, kind of stepping into ourselves. Could you give maybe a brief overview of that working group? I know that we're going to be presenting in a future time, but perhaps giving just a brief overview. And if you need something a word to spark your memory, let me know, because I have it right in the tip of my tongue for you.
Well, anything from you, Heather, will be worth hearing. So why don't you spit it out?
I will just leave the word fellowship.
Fine. That's exactly what I thought you were going to say. So, the key to the key to future capital is capital and consciousness. And so becoming consciousness is absolutely fundamental to how we use capital in the future. So the fellowship program that we're beginning to put together starts with the very idea, that we're going into or moving into a new worldview which cares beyond, not just about people, but where we have a transnational identity. We care about humanity, point one. Point two, we look at ourselves and say, how do I lead myself? Because I can't lead myself, if I can't master my fears, if I can't be fully who I am, if I can't be authentic, how can I lead a team? And if I can't lead a team, how can I lead an organization? And so it all begins with this journey to authenticity. And that, I think, is the key to bringing more and more people into the Future Capital Initiative.
Oh, Richard, thank you so much. That was beautiful. And thank you for giving a brief overview on the Fellowship of Future Capital. For those of you that want some additional information, additional information on that program, you can email us at info@futureofcapital.org, and I will put that in the comments. Lawrence, Richard, thank you so much again for joining. Lawrence, I'm going to mute and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Richard. This is your cue to go away. Thank you very much. Brilliant as always. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to introduce Amelia and Mindahi. And if you two want to bring your screens up while I'm talking about you, that's great. Just as a review, I put it into the chat, by the way, so everybody can ground themselves with this. But these first Fridays of the month really came from the impetus of us saying at Future Capital that there are really three ways that we can work together for all of us who are members here. The first is individual. So our individual work, which you're starting to see here, which is self-evident in inspiring each other in the work that we're doing. The second is bilateral. So you might find someone who's doing something that they're talking about where your work really coincides with them and you can collaborate in a meaningful way. And then in a collaborative sense, meaning at Future Capital itself, it becomes a working group, a formal working group. And that's really a perfect setup for my dear friends Mindahi and Mili. And I want to introduce them again. I'm going to read formally, but I will tell you first that the work that they are doing around this project is profound and deeply, deeply impactful in the world. I want everybody to pay close attention. There's lots of our members in here that I'm sure will want to jump in and become part of this working group, which is, by the way, open to everybody in this community. So Amelia Barlow is a consultant, entrepreneur, and philanthropist who has worked at the intersection of climate solutions and ecological rights for 15 years, dedicated to driving deeper synergy between humanity and our planet. She has developed and led initiatives for such organizations as Google, Intel, the Council on Foreign Relations, Obama Presidential Campaign, Lakota Nation, and the Climate Emergency Fund. Amelia is currently working to protect key indigenous bioculture territories, which contain, and listen carefully to this one, 80% of Earth's remaining biodiversity. Mind-blowing. She holds her BA in International Relations and International Development. And Mindahi is the director of the Original Caretakers Initiative of the Center for Earth Ethics. They describe their work like this: the Center for Earth Ethics envisions a world where value is measured according to the sustained well-being of all people and our planet. And as always, words never do justice to the absolute beauty and magnitude of the work that they're doing and the human beings they are. I'm going to go disappear. It's off to you guys, and I'll be back.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and Mindahi is going to take it away.
Thank you. This presentation is about the protection of Sacred Land, Sacred Territories Initiative, which is presented by the Fountain and other related organizations that we are taking care of about these territories, the most biocultural diverse territories in the world. The mission is that indigenous-led conservation initiative is to protect and revitalize biocultural territories that are key to a healthy climate and harmonious relationship with Mother Earth. As you know, we are in these difficult times and Mother Earth is being mistreated. We say that Mother Earth is crying and has hit irreversible tipping points due to the accelerating climate crisis and ecosystem collapse, this time because of anthropocentric behavior. So 1 million species are on the brink of extinction. And it's in indigenous territories where we face nowadays disproportionate and unprecedented destruction by extractive industry. So as Lawrence Ford said, yes, we indigenous peoples in indigenous territories, which represent 25% of the world land surface, and it embraces the 80% of the Earth's biodiversity. But just take into consideration that this 80% of biodiversity is not, let's not take it for granted. There is a lot of work carried out by indigenous people. And this is most threatened biodiversity because of mining companies, logging companies, and so on and so forth. So in these indigenous territories are 36% of the forest in the planet. So in the indigenous peoples, we can have access to ancestral wisdom. And it's a way to relate to nature and the cosmos. We have experts in animal behavior. We also connect to lands in an identity way of being. And we see animals and other trees and another it's in indigenous peoples territories that we have specialists that take care about life. And we see animals and other plants as kin. That's the very reason that we call all our relations. When we say all our relations, we are talking about the animal beings and also the plant beings and all that is life. So the most important mission is to protect the earth and all life. We must follow indigenous ecological knowledge and defend the sacred territories if we want to make it. We cannot just conserve nature without indigenous peoples. There is a close interrelationship. This is what we call biocultural heritage.
Thank you so much, Mindahi. So here at the Fountain, we are focused on three interrelated topics: sacred economics, sacred territories, and sacred cultures. The Sacred Territories Initiative comes out of the Sacred Territories purview with the Fountain. Sacred economics is what we're here actually to speak to you about today. And sacred cultures, which Mindahi will review with us in a little bit here, is the Mother Earth Delegation of United Indigenous Nations. And at the Fountain, our vision is restoring a global economy of reciprocity inspired by nature and the sacred. Our mission is to enable collaborations to create new economic models based on original principles of ancient cultures to protect and restore these sacred territories. Original principles in what has been found with the ancient culture relationships that we have is reciprocity, respect, responsibility, and relationship. And so that is what guides everything that we do. Mindahi, do you want to speak to these programs here? Oh, you're on mute.
We are moving nowadays to strengthen this Mother Earth delegation of indigenous nations. We are bringing together the most committed indigenous spiritual leaders and intelligence, ancestral wisdom coming together in order to talk about these issues, how to become together, how to become stronger, and how to become conscious and to be consciousness about the relationship with the cosmos and Mother Earth. The other initiative is the establishment of the houses of original thought, which is related to the spiritual houses where intergenerational dialogue is set up around the fire. And these houses are being built in the first phase in the Americas. 13 houses are going to be built in the next years and 52 by the year 2026. And the Pagamentos program is about the reactivation and acknowledgement of ancestral sacred sites, but also to reactivate those sacred sites and protect sacred sites through a new regime in the world with the support of UNESCO. And the Sacred Territories Initiative is that the one we are talking about right now, and we are proud of presenting these programs.
So with this, we've had the pleasure of announcing our official relationship and collaborative partnership with Future Capital. This incredible group of individuals, we are very honored to sit in this circle with you today, including several other organizations that we are able to collaborate with, including La Ciel Foundation, which is very focused on addressing humanity's separation from nature. They are working with us along with Asigaya to create and deploy the Declaration of Protection of Natural Sacred Sites. Bertha Foundation is the support that we have on the legal side, allowing us to access their network of lawyers, activists, and storytellers working in social justice and economic justice and human rights. And the International Council of Environmental Economics and Development is also a collaborative partner that we have, focused on really integrating solutions and actions for humanity and environmental upliftment. And so today we are so excited, as Lawrence mentioned, to call to action to this incredible group to participate in a working group with Indigenous delegations to reimagine finance based on reciprocity and instructed by nature and the sacred. I feel, or we feel, like this is a very unprecedented opportunity that we are currently in to really reimagine what it would look like to move beyond a traditional philanthropic model to really secure these life-sustaining assets that we have. So we're moving more towards these models of absolute sovereignty for the land and deep unification and reciprocity with all relations. And so with that, I turn it back over to you, Lawrence, and I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so very much for your attention.
Yes, and Amelia and Mindahi, why don't you stay on the screen with us as we field questions. Patty is down in Mexico and having some, just so you know, she's not being shy. She's down in Mexico and having some internet issues. So we're filling in for her on this. I think one of the things, Amelia and Mindahi, that we should just chat about here is that we have a lot of people in our organization that are working on regenerative economics and land work. And so it's really the very neat intersection between conservation land and land for just ownership and use without consciousness, right? And so there's this middle area that's very exciting about owning land with a deeper purpose. Just like we do in the economic world around environmental, social, and governance applications to our capital where we invest, there is purpose, profit, and the planet involved in those factors. The same sort of capital as it comes to land, which is our most sacred land, our mother, there needs to be a shift in how that land is treated and the ownership around that land. And so that's really the essence of what this program is. And one of the things that gets me is just the absolutely fascinating statistic about the biodiversity in the 80% number. So could you talk about that a little bit? Because I was just honestly feeling so ignorant when I heard that statistic. I had no idea.
Mindahi, do you want to go ahead on that, and then I'll follow up?
Yes. For the beginning, let's not take it for granted that this is happening. And it's in the indigenous territories that we have this basic and what we call the original instructions to care for life. So we don't take more than we need. And actually, the biocultural landscapes that we have created around our communities is this deep interrelationship that we have. We honor life, so we cannot destroy life. Instead of taking over, we take care and give care. That's very fundamental in our philosophical thinking. So this is from the law of origin, how to give care, what gives us life. For the beginning, the 4 elements are sacred. The water is sacred. The earth is sacred. The wind is sacred. So we have to think about the fire that is also sacred, because we are now dealing with these oil companies and all of these energies that are dirty. We need clean energies. For the beginning, we need clean ideas as well. So that's what it is about. So indigenous peoples, we bring this ancestral wisdom, how to behave in a proper way with our surroundings, because our surroundings is community. So the call now is to bring together family, bring together community, and strengthen our capacities, institutional capacities. And those institutions that don't care for life, they must disappear or be transformed.
I would agree. Thank you, Mindahi. To speak to your question, Lawrence, I've been working in the fields of climate solutions for a very, very long time. And my last organization that I was working with, the Climate Emergency Fund, last year, we funded quite a bit of the direct action, nonviolent direct action for climate, activists demanding urgent response to the climate emergency. And after a year of funding, I realized that there was such a shift in public opinion, and it needed to land somewhere. And if we really think and look at climate solutions, you cannot look further than the indigenous territories because of this 80% of biodiversity being within the territory. They are absolutely critical carbon sinks. 95% of, as Mindahi said, 95% of the most endangered biodiversity is within these territories. And the capacity that these indigenous peoples and the original peoples have for conservation is unprecedented. It's old information that we need to really preserve. So we're currently looking at a model where the sacred territory itself would be held in a no-go zone and a nucleus where only original caretakers are able to access to really protect the sacred site itself. And then around that would be a buffer zone. And then around that buffer zone would be an area for regenerative economies, regenerative agriculture, regenerative cultural exchange. So it's really an integrated model where we want to have individuals really participating and showing up and allowing this idea of full reciprocity and regeneration and unification to take place. And so that is really what we're asking multi-stakeholder collaborations to come to the table and create that emergent process of what that really looks like in application. So that, again, is the call to action to this group here.
May I ask a question? It's Peter here.
Oh,
yes.
Sure, Peter, go ahead. We're going to be fielding those in the future in the comments, but go ahead. Feel free to ask.
Oh, sorry. I wasn't sure how to do it.
It's perfect timing. Go right
okay. So we are in the process of establishing a venture studio that's targeted around creating a new investment model for systems change. And we have a focus on Earth as one of our core umbrellas. And in particular, one of the systems that we're looking at is food security. And I wondered how I might be able to get in contact with your project to see how we can integrate Indigenous thinking into the market mechanism of what we're building into this project, so that that type of interest, as well as the concepts that you're developing around sacred land, could be represented in a new model for investment into agriculture.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. And that's exactly what we're hoping to create with a working group out of Future Capital, very specific around these ideas that we absolutely need to come together and collaborate on. So I think that Heather put my information there in the chat function, and you can go ahead and just reach out to me directly. Schedule.
Okay, thanks. Okay,
I did. That is fantastic. Thank you so much. One last question as I'm looking at our time. The question came in, is it too late to reverse the damage that we have done to the planet, nature, and the climate? Talking about timing, is it too late?
Well, accordingly with scientists like Lovelock and others, yes, some damages are irreversible, but we still have a chance. And this chance is in front of us, is in our hands. We need to move from anthropocentric thinking to earth thinking. We need to be humble, and we need to behave as human beings. We need to honor ancestral wisdom and ancestral way of being. We don't take more than we need. We need to slow down, stop, and reverse all the damage as soon as possible, as much as we can. So we need to strengthen our capacities if we are intelligent, for the good thinking, for the good being, and for the good living. We can make it if we can come together. Thank you.
Mindahi, thank you so much. Absolutely beautiful. One last question. I think we're going to be able to get it in right in time. So in regards to the earth, how does caring about Mother Earth translate to money and translate to people's relationship with money? How do you see that being really intertwined with money and the relationship tied into Mother Earth? And this, I promise this is our last question, but it was such a good one, I couldn't not ask it.
You want to go ahead with that one, Mindahi, or I can take that?
Well, I want to try. I think money is not, it could be the problem, but it could be also an instrument to really take action and to put money into where it's really needed. Mm-hmm. Because until now, money has been seen as just for the greed way of being. But it is just an instrument that can help us if it is directed in a beautiful way. So we need to think beautifully and act in such a way. Mm-hmm. But we need to shift the way money is now being used, because there is a lot of dirty money that embraces all kind of mental issues. So we need to change that way of using money for the money that is going to be used for the clean energies and clean thinking.
I would just also add to that, that money is a currency, and we can run any form of energy through that currency. And if it's really focused on reciprocity and emulation of nature, we see in nature that there is an abundance always. There's not very much competition in that way that we think of it in the capitalist sense. So I think it's really about modeling our new economic systems and frameworks around this emulation of nature for reciprocity. So that's what we are intending to do, and again, ask you for your participation in that.
Perfect closing. Mindahi, Amelia, thank you for the beautiful work you do. And as all of our members can see, this is such an ideal fit And there's going to be a lot of beautiful collaboration, I know, going forward. And you know, this is the essence, right? These questions are beautiful and line right up to the essence of what we're doing here. It's money is a tool. It's just a tool. And we've lost our way in it, and we've fallen in love with it. And we've created this tool that has become a weaponized in many, many ways around our globe. But it's not the money. It's about our bringing the consciousness and this tool in line with that money. And thank you for bringing that up, Mindahi, as well. And so that's the essence. I also want to tell everybody, for those of you who might be a little bit newer, make sure you check out futureofcapital.org. And we will get back to you with this working group. Everybody will get a notification on this. And I know there's lots of people in this organization that'll be ready to jump right in and collaborate with you. So Amelia, Mindahi, thank you very much. Let's move on to our next guest presenter, whose name is Michael Gelb. And Michael Gelb is also a dear friend and an amazing human being doing beautiful work out in the world. And featuring Michael, I will also read his bio, which is obviously always a little strange for me to do when I know someone so well. Needless to say, Michael is an incredible inspiration to the world and doing incredible work, and a beautiful author and writer as well, and an incredible speaker, by the way. If you do need a speaker for your organization, he's outstanding. But here's the formal introduction. Michael, ready? So Michael is the world's leading authority on the application of genius thinking to personal and organizational development. He works with visionary leaders to support them in nurturing more innovative and human-centered cultures, and to inspire and equip them with the creative thinking tools and conscious communication strategies that help translate ideals into reality. Michael has led seminars, consulted, and provided executive leadership coaching to clients, including AT&T, DuPont, Emerson, Merck, and Microsoft, Nike, and the list goes on and on with the wonderful work that he does in the world. I will also like to queue up that Michael, along with some listeners who are on with us today as part of our new members with Future Capital, is pioneering some incredible work, which I hope that you talk to a little bit about bringing consciousness into our business schools and our next leaders going forward. But Michael, I'm going to disappear, bring it off to you, and then we'll come into questions. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's wonderful to be with you. Thank you so much. Thank you to Amelia and Mindahi and to Richard Barrett. Just really brilliant, really inspiring. We all grew up with the idea that there's a material world, that there's one material world, and that each of us are separate, tiny little epiphenomenon of that material world with little impermanent awareness, consciousness that lasts for 60, 70, 80, 90 years, and then it's gone. But what if there's one consciousness and many different worlds? What if each of us is just a unique, remarkable refraction of that one consciousness? The reason that, in my understanding and experience, that indigenous traditions have so much to teach us is that they operate from that paradigm, not an intellectual paradigm, but an experiential sense of oneness, not as an idea, but as an experience. So you would never harm another or the earth or the system of life if you experienced yourself as connected to it. And that's the experience of every child. All of us are born as indigenous aboriginal beings. children, that's why we just can't stop looking at them. Look at them, they're so beautiful. The eyes are so wide open. There's no sense of separation. And then we go to school, we grow up, and we get hypnotized into believing that we're separate and we're competing for a limited amount of stuff. So we have to extract as much as possible before we die. So, and you know, this is not just, by the way, universal teaching and Aboriginal wisdom and the teaching of all the great spiritual traditions of the world. This is the core of the Judeo-Christian tradition. How do you enter the kingdom of heaven? We say, become as a child. What does that mean? It means to become a seer, one who sees, one who experiences, one who knows that all life is one. So let's do a little experiment, because let's just take this from the realm of speculation. Let's test this out in our own experience. So I'm going to do this exercise, and you can do it wherever you are. So I want you to point, take good old index pointing finger, and point to an object in the room in which you are currently present. I'm pointing at a painting on my wall over there. Just point to something, some object out there. And as you point to it, look at it and see, does it have a color? Mine has some really interesting colors. Does it have a shape? And does it have boundaries? Yeah, sure, there's the one end of the painting, the other end of the painting, white wall, above and below, left and right. So point to another object. I'm now pointing to, here, you can see it. I'm now pointing to this box of tissues. And yes, it has a color. Does your object have a color? Does it have a shape? Mine clearly does. Does it have boundaries? Left, right, top, bottom? It sure does. Okay, now, please point to your right foot. And there it is. It's got a color. Yes, does yours have a color? I'm wearing a shoe. It's a black shoe. Does it have a shape? Yeah, it's foot shaped. Does it have boundaries? Sure, there's my floor and empty space to the left of it, and to the right of it, and above it, and so on. Now point to your knee, to your right knee. Color, shape, boundaries. Right, now, please point to the source of awareness, to that which has been directing attention to objects and feet and knees and so on. Point at the source. Does it have a color? Is there a shape? Does it have boundaries? I don't get a color. It's formless. And it's boundless. So for years, I've been walking down the street in New York City. Haven't done it lately for obvious reasons. And years of practicing different disciplines of consciousness, I would walk along the street with the intention of experiencing oneness and connectedness and compassion and love. But I'm from New Jersey, so this is not always easy. I grew up pretty critical, very critical family, and walked past all these people, and you just see people like, didn't your mother teach you how to dress before you went out of the house? Why are you doing? Oh my God. But learning first to be aware of that process of judgment and then step out of it. And then to attempt, I would attempt to bless people, be compassionate. I think of the Buddha's idea of we're all beings seeking happiness. So that's everybody's doing their best to seek happiness or overcome their fear. And that would help me feel a sense of connection and so on. But when we look out here, when all of us look out here, we all refract differently. We all see something different. That's part of what's fascinating, to get to know these different refractions. But I had this epiphany a while ago that when we all look in here, what we see is the same. It's vast, limitless. It's pure potentiality. It's the source of everything. So I think the big change, the really big change we're going through is from the idea that there's a material world with little bits of consciousness in it, that there's consciousness with different refractions. So what are the implications of that for business, for money, for capital? Well, we're all in it together. Richard was talking about finding stability and equilibrium. He talked about letting go of fear. He said the soul wants to express itself. It seeks connection, and it naturally wants to serve. And I loved Richard sharing all that, because it just gave me a perspective on, in the framework of this one consciousness, everything I've been studying and teaching for the last 40 few years is how to discover stability and equilibrium, how to let go of fear, how to express the uniqueness of your refraction in alignment with the one consciousness, how to find deeper connection with other beings and with all of life, and how to be of service. So I've written books about all those things because those are the things that I wanted to learn, and that's what I've been teaching in various companies, because I realized long time ago that awakening the conscience of business was the key to finding solutions to so many of these challenging issues. And Lawrence, thank you for mentioning the initiative with business schools. So I have the pleasure of teaching at the Gelb Business School at Fordham. I'm collaborating with some extraordinary people there to create a certification program in healing leadership. My most recent book was called The Healing Organization, co-authored with my friend Raj Sisodia. The subtitle is Awakening the Conscience of Business to Help Save the World. And I'll take you right to the end of the book. The end of the book is, and we do this in big presentations with hundreds of CEOs and all kinds of people. We get them to take the healing oath. And the healing oath, I'll run it by you right now. The healing oath is a primum non nocere, first do no harm. Malus eradicare, root out evil. So don't collude with or enable anybody else doing harm to the earth or to other beings. And amor vincit omnia, love conquers all, which happened to be Leonardo da Vinci's motto. So love is the natural operating system when you experience connectedness. So, do I have another minute?
Michael, this is perfect. You have another minute, and then I have a few questions.
Great.
So I'd like to ask, so please continue.
Sure, so I want to read you a quote from one of my favorite geniuses, George Washington Carver. He said, "I love to think of nature as having unlimited broadcasting stations through which God speaks to us every day, every hour, and every moment of our lives if we will only tune in. So these separate, seemingly separate refractory devices, they're just antennas for the broadcast. But there's a lot of static in the world today. So part of what I'm passionate about is helping people tune the antenna so you can get better reception and make the we talk about higher wisdom and as though it's a mystical far off thing and you have to go off and do lots of retreats and journeys. It's accessible to all of us right now, every day. And my passion is to help people wake up to that, especially people who are leading organizations. My greatest passion right now is working with leaders one-on-one, doing lots of executive life coaching, whatever you want to call it. It's just, how do you live your purpose? How do you access this? How do you make it real? How do you enroll and engage others to make the world a more beautiful place?
Michael, that is so beautiful. Thank you so much. So I want to just do just that right now with our community. I want to begin to engage the community. So I would love to ask everyone to turn their video on, and we want to give you the opportunity to ask your questions live to Michael and really engage the community. Hi, Lynn. Hi, Joy T. It's fantastic. It's always my favorite parts to see everyone. So feel free to turn on your video or stay incognito as you feel comfortable. Beautiful.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I hear a voice from above.
I can't get my audio on my video on, but I have a question.
Sure, feel free to ask. Go
How
ahead.
does Michael's work relate to the work of Otto Scharmer of MIT? I hear great similarities.
Thank you. Yes, I think from what I know about Otto, I think we're on the same wavelength. And that's what's so wonderful is this is happening in so many different forms. There's conscious capitalism. There's the B Corp movement. There are people everywhere waking up to this notion. But here's something that's really compelling, because I work with lots of people over the years. Lawrence, you read some of the clients I work with. And what's really wonderful in enrolling people now is that now we have the data, we have the research that shows that when you effectively take the healing oath, when you serve a higher purpose in your business, when you look after the welfare of all stakeholders, including the planet, you'll make more money. You'll make more money. Once you get that, why would you do anything else? Why would you do anything else? It's the gospel. It's good news. It's hallelujah. My co-author in the healing organization, Raj Sisodi, he wrote this book years ago called Firms of Endearment. It was one of the books that made the case that, look at the data. Here's the so-called good to great companies profiled in Jim Collins's book. Here's the companies profiled in Firms of Endearment that treat all their stakeholders with care and dignity and love. The good to great companies have one criteria for what makes you good or great, and that's only financial return. Well, among those companies, you have Wells Fargo, you've got Philip Morris, you've got Circus City, out of business, treated people horribly, right? But even by the good to great criteria, money, the firms of endearment companies have significantly outperformed the good to great companies since the research was done. And that outperformance gets stronger when there's a grave difficulty like there is now, because people love these companies. People put more energy, more heart, more passion, and not just employees, but communities, customers, vendors, and investors.
And Michael, in real time for everybody here, we are seeing an incredible positive experience in those types of companies in our portfolios at Conscious Capital and beyond that have been buffered significantly during these downtimes. Now, some of this is obvious stuff, like, a lot of these aren't invested in oil, so that helped out. But when we look underneath all of the details, and our wonderful asset managers, Mark Sloss, who's on the call today, could speak to this in more detail, but it's really incredible. So the fact that you can do good and do well, like our buddy Steve Sheath has been preaching for a million years, is really true today. And so it's not a sacrifice. It is the new way, and it's really, really exciting. So thank you for that question around money. Also, anybody who has questions in any other, I know some of these are coming through in chat, Heather or Patty, if you've made it back from Mexico, please feel free to jump in and moderate these.
I have a question for Michael. It's Catan. Hey, Michael. Hi, how are you? Michael, I saw Michael present and facilitate actually a few hundred people at one of the biggest pension funds in the US. These are hard-nosed investors who, feel the obligation to make money however they need to on behalf of their membership. Michael, your job was to get into their hearts and souls and make them think differently about the world. Can you say a little bit about that? Because that was a pretty tough job to do, I remember.
Thank you. Well, it's funny because in the beginning of my career, I moved from London to Washington, D.C. in 1982 with a view towards teaching awareness, creativity, and innovation to government. Because I thought that's where I could have the most influence. And well, we can see how that worked out. And I also thought about working directly with education, but there wasn't as much initiative from the educational sector because it's kind of bureaucratic. But there was tremendous interest from business leaders, which really surprised me. And I have to say that I was blessed that over the years, the people who engaged me were visionary leaders who intuited this, even if they couldn't articulate it. They were just the kind of people who wanted to bring out the best in all the people that they were serving through their enterprises. And I walked into many, many situations where people were sent by the boss. They were told it was mandatory, and they usually made mandatory all caps. So I walk in to the group like the one you described, and many, many others, much worse than the one you saw, by the way. People looking at me like, and that's if they're even nice enough to look at me. They're just I was doing this before everybody had a device, but they found a way to show with their body language that they thought this was all going to be a waste of their time, and who the heck was this? Plus, I was really young then too, which didn't help either. And what I found was two things. One was I'd always pray before I spoke. Yeah, and I needed to as well. But I would always invoke that sense of the consciousness that connects us and ask for help in helping to awaken people to their own creative potential. And I knew I was there to serve. I was there to, if I can help you realize that you can be creative and you can teach that to your children, you're going to have a more beautiful life. And somehow most people seem to realize that when you fundamentally really care and want to give them something that's going to help their lives, their body language changes, they open up, they start to make eye contact with you. And the other thing I always focused on was if I could make them laugh, we'd always connect. So I've been working on my stand-up routine for years and having lots of fun. Because to me, the ha-ha and the aha are first cousins.
It's beautiful, Michael. Thank you. And I wanted to remind everybody that this is a community. and you are part of this community with us. We don't have like, a special ring that you have to, that we give out, or some kind of code that you have to pass through to get to us. This is a community of understanding this nexus of consciousness and capital, and supporting the work that you're doing individually in the world, or work that you want to do in the world. And so by these monthly meetings, what we're doing is we're providing the ability for people to be inspired, to find someone they want to connect with your own work that you're doing, and let us know about that. So a couple things: info at futureofcapital.org is the way that you can reach us. Reach out to us, let us know if you want to be part of these. And we have 3 every month, the first Friday of the month, so 3 presenters. So please let us know if you want to get into the queue with that. Also, come in for futureofcapital.org. Check out the website. It'll give you more details about what we're all about if you need to know that and don't know that enough. And then also sign up to make sure that you get emails going forward. But I know, Heather, I see a little note that we've got some more questions. So before we close out, I just wanted to make sure that that was overt here, because there are many different types of organizations. There's many different types of projects. And what this really is a global movement of where we're providing a platform and a safe community for people to be able to come and move their work forward. As part of an organization itself, what we do is we have a working group that works really, really hard. I'm going to call out Steve Sheath and Patty Clower and Heather Desjardins, and of course myself on here. We have other people that come in and out, like Gary and other people that I'm not naming now, and I apologize. But every single week, despite our better judgment, sometimes we're hammering out meetings with full calendars. And so that's really driving us forward. We also have working groups then that grow from this quite organically, and we allow them to be organic, like the group that Ketan is leading, like the group that is this teaching of consciousness that is happening, the education group. Our collaboration with the World Academy of Arts and Sciences is something that is very near and dear to us, and working with our sister organization as they do wonderful work in the world. And also, of course, with the United Nations and the World Bank. So Heather, I will just leave everybody with that. Thank you, please. And also, this is open, as I said. So please, next month, share, tell people about this, welcome them into these calls. And Heather, I'll let you lead with that question.
Well, fantastic. So keep your eyes open for an email. You're going to be receiving an email on how to access a replay to this. So if you want to see it again, or if you know someone that might resonate with this, please feel free to share that and share the invitation. These are, like Lawrence said, these are open monthly calls on the first Friday. So mark your calendar and you'll be receiving information for the next call. And I have put everyone's contact information in the chat, as well as how to reach everyone. So please feel free to reach out. And if you yourself would like to be a presenter, like Lawrence says, please feel free to email for more information. Thank you all again for spending time. We know that during this time, Lawrence, I will come right back to your moment. We know that your time is valuable, and we appreciate you spending it with us. Lawrence, I will turn it over to you. I see your hand.
Thank you. And I also just wanted to make very clear, because it's not something that we are normally thinking of in our everyday culture, regardless of what part of the world you're in, is this nexus between consciousness and capital. So it's really important that we keep coming back to this point. Next week, you will see, we will go very deep in some cases on the capital side, on the environmental, social governance, portfolio allocation, and how models are created for investments around the world, and how capital can break through this block of advisors that manage somewhere around $80 billion around our globe, that are the actual sticking point of allowing the demand and the opportunity for healthy capital to flow. We will move into economic models, great thinkers and leaders in the economy, and how we can become a more conscious global economy, and some very serious, rigorous work that's being done in those areas. So you'll get different flavors. The whole idea is, if we are going to make substantial changes, we have to come from a different consciousness that created them. That is why we come in with a multi-stakeholder approach to this. We welcome in indigenous wisdom. We welcome in academia. We welcome in organizations and government organizations like the United Nations and the World Bank. We all have a voice. And as our friend Stephen always tells us of the story is, we all have one hand out on this elephant. Some might think it's like a suitcase, or some might feel a trunk. We all have a piece of the answer. And the world is calling us now to all come together to share and to come together to solve these problems. Because as Mindahi said at the beginning of this call, it is, yes, a great crisis we're in the midst of. And yes, at the same time, an incredible window of opportunity for us to affect significant transformative change in our world. And all of us on this call today are being called to be leaders, not one ounce better than the other. And so this organization calls you, begs you to please participate, to come, leave your ego behind, leave your dogmas behind, and bring your incredible experience and skills forth along with us so we can transform this world through more global conscious economies and heal that nexus, that interconnected tissue that is the difference between consciousness and capital that needs healing. So thank you all once again for showing up. We'll see you next month. Reach out to us, reach out to each other, go do good, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Aloha.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
It was excellent.
Son, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Beautiful seeing all the faces.